Nikolay gazed sadly at the plate before him, the pasta being far from satisfying. "This is dinner?" he questioned, his disappointment evident. "It's all we have," Katya calmly replied, attempting to pacify her husband. But her words only seemed to ignite his frustration. "Is this what you call dinner? I'm a man. I need meat," he exclaimed, his anger growing. "We don't have money for meat," Katya explained, her tone conciliatory. However, her explanation did little to calm her husband. Instead, it seemed to fuel his rage. "Where did it all go then? Did you spend it all on useless things again? I just gave you my paycheck," Nikolay accused, his voice filled with accusation. Katya glanced down at her neglected nails, which hadn't seen a fresh coat of polish in months. With a sigh, she responded calmly, "Firstly, dear, you gave me your paycheck 3 weeks ago, and all of it went towards groceries. From my paycheck, I paid the utilities and the loan. I didn't spend a dime on useless things for myself." "Is that so? Is that really so?" Nikolay retorted, his frustration evident. Quietly, Katya began to eat her meager portion. She was tired of these constant arguments and her husband's perpetual dissatisfaction. The never-ending battle with finances and his unwillingness to seek better employment weighed heavily on her. "You have to work harder if you want to earn more," he shouted angrily. "Am I supposed to toil like a horse from morning till night? Maybe you should stop spending so much on your salons." Serenely, Katya replied, "I already work 2 jobs, even though I'm no horse myself. And my work involves more than just talking to chickens, as you so crudely put it. Maybe you should try finding a job like mine, where you can sit around and do nothing but still get paid." Katya had managed to save some money, but she had been putting it aside for a new coat. Not because she wanted one, but because it was embarrassing to wear her old, worn-out one to work. She had done her best to hide the phrase and sew back on the missing buttons, even adding some decorative patches, but it was clear that it was time for a replacement. The next day, Katya went to the store and purchased a chicken using the money that she had set aside. She tried to reassure herself, thinking, "It's nothing. This month, they promised a bonus. I'll add that to it." However, her husband was not impressed with the chicken. He looked disgusted at the dish that his wife prepared, silently leaving the table and making it clear that he had no intention of eating this meager meal. Instead, Nicholas went to his mother's place after work to eat, claiming that his wife had spent all the money on a manicure and there was nothing left to eat at home. His mother shook her head disapprovingly, regretting that her son had married such a spendthrift. She served him a hearty portion of borscht, which she had cooked in a large pot, hoping that it would last for a week. The old woman, too, was saving money as much as possible. The cost of medicines had risen so much that they had to choose between buying food or seeking treatment. When payday arrived, Nikolay only gave his wife half of his paycheck. "I need a new winter jacket," he explained. "I've been wearing this one for 2 years, and it's enough." Katya was indignant and retorted, "And what about me? I have been wearing the same coat for 5 years. Is that normal?" Nikolay responded coldly, "You can either go to nail salons or get a new coat. Choose one." Frustrated, Katya argued, "What about the loan and the utility bill? Who do you think pays for those?" Nikolay dismissed her concerns, saying, "Are there really that many utilities? Can't you handle it?" Katya snapped back, "There are more. Am I just a woman to deal with the bills?" Katya was in tears, saying goodbye to her new coat, but her husband ignored her emotions and retreated into the room without a word. "Stop being hysterical," he shouted, demanding that she prepare dinner. The following day, everything seemed to be slipping through Katya's fingers at work. After lunch, she reached out to her boss, Ivan Trofimovich. "Katerina, I can't seem to comprehend what's going on with you today. Are you facing any problems?" Ivan asked, concerned. "No," Katya replied quietly, yet tears betrayed her as they rolled down her cheeks. "All right, let's calm down," Ivan said, pouring a glass of water from the decanter on the table and handing it to Katya. He patiently waited until she took a few sips before instructing her, "Now tell me." Katya began pouring out her heart, feeling relieved to release the burden she had been carrying alone. She had been trying to convince everyone, including herself, that everything was fine. Upon hearing her story, Ivan asked, "Do you have children?" "No," Katya responded, fear evident in her voice. "I see. It's probably for the best considering your husband. However, I can assist you on your own. It would be more challenging with children. Our factory has a dormitory, a relic of the past, to be precise. It may not be luxurious, but it provides decent living conditions. One of our workers recently got married and moved out with her husband, leaving her place vacant. I can write you a referral, but don't take too long to decide. There are others in need as well," Ivan Trofimovich offered, tenderly stroking Katya's hand as she looked at him apprehensively. "Thank you, Ivan Trofimovich," Katya said, wiping her tears. "But please don't refuse right away. Take some time to think it over for a week." The boss studied her carefully before telling her to go back to work. Nicholas, her husband, didn't speak to her and even skipped dinner, as he usually went to see his mother after work. Katya tried to reconcile with him by buying some chops with the remaining money, but he defiantly passed by the kitchen. However, during the night while she was asleep, he snuck in and half of the tray of meat mysteriously disappeared. Katya noticed the missing meat but didn't say anything, hoping that it would lead to reconciliation with her husband. Just before lunch, Ivan Trofimovich burst into the room where Katya and the other women were working. "Girls, I need your help. We urgently need to take samples of our products to potential customers." He looked around as the women exchanged glances and began making excuses. However, Katya decided to step up and help. "Ivan Trofimovich, let me take care of it," she offered, getting up from her desk. The customers were impressed with the samples, showering them with compliments and promising to place a large order. But what embarrassed Catherine the most was one customer who complimented her not just on the products, but on herself as well. He even walked her to the building's exit. "Catherine, could we meet again sometime?" he asked, quickly adding, "For business, of course. Please come and visit our factory." Katerina warmly beckoned with a smile. Her spirits lifted, and she strolled leisurely toward the bus stop. Unexpectedly, she spotted Nikolai entering a nearby establishment with another man. Curiosity piqued, Katya cautiously drew nearer, scanning the sign above the entrance. It was a cafe. Through the vast window pane, she caught a glimpse of her husband savoring the dishes served before him with gusto. Determined to unravel the mystery of Nikolai's newfound resources for cafe dining, she ventured into the establishment. Approaching her husband's table, she opted for discretion, eavesdropping on their conversation before potentially causing a scene. Perhaps the stranger was treating Nikolai to a meal as a gesture of gratitude. Dividing the tables with low partitions, Katya discreetly settled into one of them. "The ribs are exceptional today," the stranger commented. Indeed, Nikolai concurred. "Although the salad falls short, it lacks enough dressing and salt. It suits my taste just fine." "I'm not so sure." "You're just being overly critical," the man chuckled. "Have you forgotten what your wife serves for dinner?" "I don't dine at home anymore," Nikolai boasted. "Do you go to restaurants then?" "No, I go to my mother's. She knows how to feed a man. I can't afford dining out twice a day." "Doesn't your Katerina wonder why you bring home so little money?" the stranger inquired. "Yes," Nikolai admitted. "She believes my salary is the same as it was 2 years ago. There's no need for her to know my actual income. In fact, I'm thinking of not giving her any money at all. She'll manage just fine. She's already living in my apartment. What if she decides to leave? Who needs her? She's got no charm, no looks." As Katerina listened to her husband's hurtful words, she felt a surge of anger building inside her. She couldn't believe that she had sacrificed so much for this man, only to be talked about in such a demeaning manner. Wiping away her tears, she mustered up the courage to confront him. "No, Kolya, you're wrong," Katya exclaimed, emerging from her hiding spot. "I am leaving you and filing for divorce." Kolya dismissed her outburst as hysteria, urging her to leave and save herself from embarrassment. But Katerina wasn't going to back down easily. Nikolai seemed to recover quickly from his wife's appearance and turned to the person he was conversing with. "You see," he said, directing his words towards the onlookers. "Not only does she look like a homeless person and can't even cook, but she's also hysterical. I'm tired of her dramatics." Katerina couldn't contain her anger any longer. Addressing the curious eyes in the cafe, she responded to her husband's accusations. "Do you want to know why I look like a mess?" she retorted, her gaze scanning the room. "It's because he spends his entire salary on himself. Meanwhile, I work 2 jobs to pay the bills, the loan, and even provide for this ungrateful handsome sitting here. And not only that, he doesn't consider the fact that his mother, a pensioner, relies on her meager income while she feeds him like a child. I'm done with this." With determination in her eyes, Katerina turned her back to the stunned silence of the cafe and headed towards the exit. Nikolai shouted after her, calling her hysterical, but she paid him no attention. Meanwhile, the person sitting across from Nikolai looked at him sternly and spoke up. "Indeed, Kolya," they said. "You can't deny that your wife is sacrificing everything for the family. Moreover, it's not right to let an old woman go hungry while you indulge yourself. You don't even contribute to her meals, do you? And let's not forget about your infidelity." Nikolai attempted to defend himself, but the person interrupted, stating that there was no need to listen further. They could clearly see the truth in Katerina's words, and refused to sit at the same table with someone so selfish and dishonest. In the midst of the tension, Katerina left the cafe, leaving behind a resounding silence and a husband who was forced to face the consequences of his actions. The man angrily threw some bills on the table and exited the room. Nikolai, consumed by anger, couldn't wait to leave work and return home. He shouted for Katya from the doorway, but there was no response. Without wasting any time, he rushed through the living room and into the bedroom, only to find that Katerina was nowhere to be found. Sensing something was wrong, he quickly checked the closet, but her belongings were missing as well. Frantically, he made his way to the kitchen, but it was empty. The only thing left on the dining room table were the keys to the apartment. "Well, we'll see how long you can hold out," Nikolai seethed. "You'll come crawling back like a little girl." Meanwhile, Katya stood in front of the mirror, admiring her newly bought clothes. Since leaving her husband, she unexpectedly had some extra money that she had been saving. Today, when she placed a portion of her paycheck into a box, she discovered a considerable stack of bills. Katya counted the money and sat down on the bed surprised. Her dream coat had become a reality, and she was delighted to find new boots as a bonus. "What's the matter? Surprised?" chuckled her roommate, Svetlana. "Do you think Santa Claus left them there?" "Oh, I don't even know what to think," whispered Katerina. "Well, what is there to think about?" Svetlana exclaimed. "We don't pay much for the dormitory, and you don't have any loans to pay off. You only have to take care of yourself, and you hardly eat anything. So it's no surprise that you've saved up so much. You could easily support yourself with just one paycheck, yet here you are, getting a second job. There's nothing to be surprised about." Together with Svetlana, Katya accompanied to the shopping center where they selected a coat and boots. Afterward, they decided to celebrate their purchases by going to a cafe for some ice cream. As Svetlana indulged in her third serving, she asked with a sly look, "Is Roman joining us today?" Roman happened to be a client whom Katya had delivered samples to. He had taken a liking to her soon after she moved into the dormitory. Initially, Katya had rejected his advances, but under Sveta's persuasion, she agreed. Sveta had convinced her, saying, "Let him prove that not all men are like your ex, Nikolai, and today was supposed to be their third date. Typically, they would take walks in the park as Kedia felt self-conscious about her appearance. However, today she was open to Roman's invitation to a cafe. Meanwhile, Nikolay sat at a table, discontentedly picking at his plate of sticky pasta. He didn't have any money in his pockets. In the first month after Kedia left, he continued to live his life as before, even finding solace in the fact that he no longer had to provide for his wife. However, a month later, he received an unexpected phone call. "Your loan payment is overdue. We have applied penalties and expect payment soon." The voice on the other end scolded him. Nikolay was furious. How could this be? Why wasn't Kedia paying for the loan? He immediately called his wife to reprimand her. "The loan is under your name, and the item bought with this credit is still with you. So why should I be the one paying for it?" Kedia calmly retorted before ending the call. After a while, Nikolay found himself burdened with utility debts on top of his loan arrears. It never crossed his mind to consider who would be responsible for paying the bills. Unfortunately, these debts turned out to be quite substantial, given his tendency to forget to turn off lights and conserve water. With no other choice, Nikolay used his salary to settle his debts, leaving him practically penniless. He decided to seek help from his mother, only to discover that she was not at home. In fact, she had been hospitalized due to complications resulting from her inability to afford necessary medications. Despite using most of her pension to feed Nikolay, she couldn't afford her own medical treatment. Even the meals at his mother's house were no longer a saving grace for Nikolay. Scrounging up the last of his money, he bought the cheapest pasta he could find, hoping it would sustain him until his next paycheck, all the while cursing Katerina for their situation. A week of such a restricted diet ended up being unbearable for Nikolay. Unable to even stand the sight of the pasta anymore, he decided to go for a walk, in an attempt to distract himself from the hunger. It just so happened to be a day off, and as he roamed the streets, he couldn't help but notice the townspeople leisurely enjoying their time, visiting cafes and restaurants. It was while passing by one of these restaurants that Nikolay spotted his ex-wife in the window. She was laughing at something the well-dressed man sitting across from her had said. Feeling a mix of emotions, Nikolay immediately turned on his heel and rushed back home to his cold macaroni, realizing he had no other option but to endure his meager means.